This week on Talk by Turner, we're diving into leadership, current leadership trends in our evolving world, political leadership qualities on a national and global scale, and personal leadership advice for people looking to improve their skills and succeed in their daily lives. I'm your host, Jeffrey Colon, and you're listening to Talk by Turner. Talk by Turner dives deep into intellectual discovery while examining what's happening in our world right here, right now. Join us each week to hear from industry experts and published authors as they share their knowledge and insight on today's most important topics. Now, let's see who's on this week's episode. This week on Talk by Turner, we're joined by Byrd Baggett, author, professional speaker, and leadership development consultant. His corporate experience includes sales and management careers with 2 Fortune 500 companies. And he's a certified speaking professional, the highest earned designation presented by the National Speakers Association. His books provide insight into how to be a good leader, from tips for marketing yourself in the business world to how to leverage enthusiasm and concern for others on the path to success. Welcome, Byrd, to Talk by Turner.
Thanks, Jeff. It's good to be with you.
Hey, so to start, what is one thing that you hope listeners will gain from the conversation that we're going to have today?
Jeff, my goal is for people to understand how to embrace the transformational power of authenticity to improve themselves and the lives they touch. I just feel we don't have enough authentic leaders in our society today. You know, authentic leaders are purpose-focused, values-grounded, and behaviors-driven. And I've been teaching and facilitating and writing books on that subject for over 30 years.
Well, it's exciting because I think, authenticity, we hear the word a lot, like you said, doesn't seem to be practiced too much in leadership. So I'm excited to dive deep with you on a number of those questions. So in a recently conducted poll that Gallup had done, they found that 4 attributes followers most identify with positive leadership are the following: hope, trust, compassion, and stability, with hope coming out on top, accounting for 56% of all attributes tied to positive leaders. So my question to you, is this consistent with what you've observed in your professional experience?
Jeff, I'll say a resounding yes. My business partner is a retired 3-star general, and we started a company called True Growth Leadership in 2007. And help develop authentic leaders. And so we've served over 16,000 leaders since then. So we have a lot of data working with people. And I smile when you ask that question because there are 2 most important responsibilities of a leader that we found. There are more, but these are the top of the list. And the Gallup survey reinforced it. Define reality, which is the truth, and keep hope alive. And my business partner, Lawson Magruder, retired 3-star general, spoke about stability. I asked him, had a very successful career in the Army. I asked him, Lawson, what was your key to success? Obviously, he was technically competent, Jeff, but his answer is another word for stability. His answer was calmness.
Yes.
Staying centered during the fray.
Yes.
Jeff, back to hope. I heard this years ago, and it stuck in my soul. You can live 40 days without food, 4 days without water, but only 4 seconds without hope. And isn't it true? I mean, you and I talked briefly about coming on air that if you don't have hope, you have nothing. And again, as you know, I've written several books on leadership. I'm known for original quotes and acronyms. That's just my gift based on real life. People always ask me, what's your favorite quote on leadership? Out of the 4 books on leadership I've been blessed to write. And Jeff, here it is. It'll never change. If you don't love people, you'll never lead them.
Yes. Yes. Wow. So Byrd, I've never heard that quote before, but I 100% Agree with it. You have to really love people in order to, because you have to understand them, what motivates them. It's fascinating. Wow.
You just gave me goosebumps. Yeah, you know, there's a great book, you probably read it, but I'm a voracious reader. I always want to, you know, validate my thoughts, my beliefs, my philosophy. But you've probably read the book As a Man Thinketh by James Allen.
Yes.
Right
No
thought is
question.
mastery, self-control is strength, calmness is power. Stability, right?
That's right. That's right. It's funny that you said the word stability because that's what we constantly hear in professional scenarios, even non professional scenarios, where people will say, oh, we have one person on the team that is constantly providing calmness and stability, and it gets everyone else to rally around that and feel calm and dedicated as well, whether it's professional sports, whether it's business environments, whether it's politics. That is one trait I constantly feel you need on a team. So I love hearing that from you. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, because as you know, Jeff, I'm an eternal optimist but a realist. We have a whole lot of noise out there.
Yeah.
You know, real lions don't need to roar. And yeah, but hey, listen, I'm God's laboratory rat. I can smell an ego from a mile away because mine used to really stink. So yeah, and so I totally agree with that survey. And you know, I heard years ago I was a closing keynote speaker in Las Vegas years ago in a large audience. Unbeknownst to me, there was a futurist that spoke right before me. I don't remember his name, but I remember what he said, Jeff. Because some people listening to this, oh, say Jeff Byrd, that's touchy-feely stuff, compassion, hope. But here's what he said, a futurist. And he said, what's most important can't be measured.
Yes.
You either give hope or you don't. You either love people or you don't, right?
Love it. So that leads me to my next question, which is really around you have all these attributes, but you also have a lot of change in leadership style going on out there. So, what changes in leadership styles have you personally observed
Me,
that, is in response to a lot of changing societal norms?
Jeff, that's a great question. And we have three children. They're all millennials, okay? Uh, and so and our two daughters are professionals, so you know, I get to work with them, ask them questions. They get tired of me asking them questions. But um, as far as the leadership child, the changes I've noticed at work, more seasoned leaders, and I made myself a note, more seasoned leaders like myself, I'm a baby boomer, 75, have had to become more collaborative in leading others. Because, you know,
Yes.
my younger days, like military, command and control, you know, I'm the boss, I've got a title. But we
That's
were
right.
all humans before we were titled, and people want to be treated with dignity and respect. I call it PhD of leadership, preserve human dignity. And how you do that, people want to feel valued, secure, and appreciated. And what I found working, God, I've been blessed. The teams I've worked with, from mom and pop companies to $8 billion company that I'm working with now. I've been working with them over 20 years, by the way. I tell them, aren't you getting tired of me? But I've observed there are four values of high performing teams, Jeff. And here they are. Trust, open and honest communication, respect, and the Achilles tendon of too many organizations, they don't have number four, accountability. Trust,
Yes.
open and honest communication, respect, and accountability. And again, it's just more collaborative, right? Ask the questions. And you said, what's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, number 5?
Another good book.
Seek first to understand.
Yes.
And how do you
Yes.
understand people? You said it, get to know them on a deep
That's right.
level.
You got to get to know what gets people to tick. It almost reminds me of, so in the entertainment industry, you have writers' rooms, you have creatives and creators. when I worked in that environment, I always used to go around the office to just hang out with people. And everyone's like, why are you wasting time? I'm like, I'm not wasting time. I'm finding out what motivates people, what gets them to tick, what they like to do. Because that ultimately goes back to your point here, Byrd, which is you understand people. If you understand people, you can motivate them a lot better.
Well, you know, Jeff, something that will never change, and you just reinforced it, is relationships.
Yes.
Building deep, that's how you do it. And you don't do it sitting in your office and sending a text or an email. I call email e-jail. You know, I mean, and again, you know, younger leaders are looking for more humanity and humility.
Yes.
And more work-life balance, right?
Yes. Yes.
You know, I used to, you know, whoever works the latest, you know, I look back on my life, and I used to work all these hours when I was in corporate America, worked for 2 Fortune 500 companies. You know, I was busy a lot, Jeff, but I wasn't effective.
Yes.
And you know what's interesting? You're familiar with David Brooks, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Well, this is interesting. He's got a great podcast or YouTube video called World on Fire. Have you seen it?
I have. Yes.
Well, this links into what you're talking about. We've got a global spiritual, relational, and moral crisis.
Yes.
Our society is in deep need of a secure spiritual foundation and hope, i.e. relationships.
Yes. Leaders that lead by the heart and the mind, but lead by the heart and the mind more than just sort of like by the hammer.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you. Let me tell the 6 names of my spiritual board of directors from the heart. You ready?
Yes.
They're all deceased. Jesus, and I'm not proselytizing. Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., Abe Lincoln, Billy Graham, and St. Francis. Did you know Mother Teresa had a business card?
I did not know that. I did not know that, but that's interesting.
A friend of mine had an audience with her, Brad Harshus, shortly before she passed away. She gave him 6 business cards, Jeff. He gave me 1. Listen to the words on our business card. And I share this with people when I'm speaking. I said, if Mother Teresa had a business card with leadership wisdom, you think we ought to listen? You know, they turkey with you. Yeah. Listen, the fruit of silence is prayer. The fruit of prayer is faith. The fruit of faith is love. The fruit of love is service. The fruit of service is peace. And you said something a while ago, so true, they're heart-driven. Authentic leadership is inside out. If you don't know what your purpose is and your core values, and most people don't.
Yeah. And it sort of lends to where I want to ask you next, which is you have authentic leadership, you have sort of this need for leading from the heart. And at the same time, we sort of have this technological movement that's happening throughout the world and throughout business. So, how do you think this rapid advancement of technologies, specifically artificial intelligence and automation, how is that impacting leaders across different sectors, both positively and negatively?
Wow, how much time you got for this? You got about an hour? No, I will tell you positive to say about the technological revolution. It's good to share information, but when it comes to leadership, the digital Babylon out there, that people are busy, not effective. Some people, that's how they choose to lead. Hey, I sent you that text. I sent you that email. Why didn't you call? Don't get me wrong. I've got all the technology, but this is what leadership's all about. It's what you said earlier. Why do you get up and walk around the office? Yesterday, my wife asked me, how do you meet all these people? I was at a Walmart and I was going back to my car and I met a young man, 26 years old, from Ethiopia. He moved here when he was 2. We started talking about this. And you know what he told me, Jeff? Now he's 26. He said, Byrd, I don't have deep conversations with my friend.
Yeah.
They want
Yes.
to be short bursts of social media. And he's majoring in a neuroscientist, and he said that's like dopamine. You get those quick fixes, and so when you start having deep conversations, your brain's telling you this is not real.
That's right.
I
That's right.
you know who Thomas Merton was, uh, and you of course know Dietrich Bonhoeffer, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Listen to this about technology. Thomas Merton, the monk who I read him every day. He died in 1968. Listen to what he said about technology. Technology and science are now responsible to no power and submit to no control other than their own. Needless to say, the demands of ethics no longer have any meaning if they come in conflict with those autonomous powers. Technology has its own ethic of expediency and efficiency. What can be done efficiently must be done in the most efficient way. And then Bonhoeffer said this: the demand for absolute liberty brings men to the depths of slavery. The master of the machine becomes its slave. The machine becomes the enemy of men. The creator turns against his creator in a strange reenactment of the fall. Now, is that providential?
What I think is wild about it is from 60 years ago, but it's describing now. Like the vision of that is impressive when you read that.
Well, I do some personal coaching and mentoring, and I always tell people, I said, hey, I can't change you. Like, people are going to watch this, listen to this. I can't change anybody. But I share, as long as you're coachable and willing to change. And I coached a young man, and there's a book called The Happiness Advantage written by Sean Achor, and he talks about the 2 keys to happiness: strong social connections and gratitude. And
Yeah.
Jeff, most people, especially men, they have a lot of acquaintances, but not a lot of friends.
That's correct.
So anyway, I got the technology, but that's not how you build deep relationships.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point there, because they're lacking the number one aspect. They have no social bonds. They have no social relationships. I think I read something that a number of men over the age of 40 don't even have one close friend. Think about that for a second, Byrd. Like, no, not one. And the interesting thing is, as you age, your circle of influence, well, it shrinks. Not necessarily by design, but you sort of figure out, okay, here's the people I like hanging out with. And that I think scares me when I hear people who say, well, I don't have a circle of influence at all. It's like, well, they're not going to have, they have no room to go from 5 to 2. They're already at 0 in terms of their relationships. I think, we have to figure out how to solve for
Jeff,
that.
you make a key point. The worst disease is loneliness.
Yes.
And you've studied it. We live in a society with the highest standard of living in the history of the world, but the lowest quality of life. Depression, suicides, loneliness. Most men don't have a friend. And I'm real blessed that I have been a part of a men's personal board of directors, which I recommend. There are 6 of us, Jeff, and we've been together since 2007.
Wow.
We have a 1-hour phone call and an annual retreat. We talk deep stuff. Those guys would do anything, and we're very vulnerable. And men have a tough time being vulnerable. And real men don't cry. We just rush from the inside out, right?
That's right.
And I'm going to share something with you, Jeff, if it ties into this. I think you probably checked the website. I love Mother Nature. The true growth metaphor is a 300-year-old oak tree on the Guadalupe River. And what I'm getting ready to tell you, that all came from me sitting under her. There are 4 seasons of growth. And we have an assessment around these, by the way. And I'll tell you an interesting statistic. Won't surprise you. There are 4 seasons. All of us are in one of the 4. The first is the season of self. That's the oak tree with no roots. The second season, which you'll get into if you're a season of self, is the season of drought. That's when you realize, man, my way's not working. As hard as it is, I got to let go. I got to seek the truth, which is the water. That's when the taproot search for the truth. That's when true growth really starts. The next season is a season of new growth, when you start growing those new behaviors, a spring of life. right? You discover what your core values are. The tap roots found the water, and you really believe the importance of seeking the truth. And then the fourth season is a season of significance. That's Mystic Oak, 300 years old, got these deep roots, got her tap roots in the water, knows what her core values are, knows what her purpose is, by the way, Jeff, to grow and to give back. And there are acorns underneath Mystic Oak giving back. So it's interesting, the 16,000 people we've worked with, guess where the majority of people find themselves? Season of self, drought, new growth, or significant.
Where?
You guess where the majority find themselves?
Drought? I don't know.
Jeff, it's amazing. And these are successful people, 16,000 of them, between self and between drought and new growth. Very few people, not even 3%, find themselves in seasons of significance. And you know what the dirt is around Mystic Oak? Relationships.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
like
just
so do you try to figure out how to, motivate people to get to that sort of the later stage?
well, what we help them, we have a very unique experience. And I can say this objectively. People that have gone through it say it's the immersion of self-awareness, best leader development experience of their careers. And that's not me just saying that. That's the feedback. We help them discover their 5 core values and their purpose. Because if you don't know what your core values, how can you be well-grounded down to earth?
That's right. Got to know yourself first, what you stand for. Yeah.
And Jeff, I went through this in 2007. Do the math, I'm 75 now. And I discovered my purpose. Literally, it has changed my life. When I get up in the morning, I say, reflect on it. And when I go to bed at night, did I do it? And my purpose is simple as this. Live a life that inspires hope in others.
Simple yet impactful mission statement.
We have people today, 20 years later, that they have a true growth pocket card where they have the purpose, values, and the behaviors that bring the values to life. Jeff, when we meet them, they'll say, hey, I have this in my wallet or my purse. So that's how you live a life of significance, that you can withstand the inevitable storms of life. Because as you know, too many people, especially men, our identity is external.
Yes.
That can be taken away, and your previous job.
That's right. You're speaking to my heart here, Byrd, because that is, so many people define themselves by what they do, a job title, or here's the industry that I work in. And then you wake up one day and it's like, you don't have that job title and you're not maybe working for that company anymore. And I could see why some people, they're sort of hopeless and they feel lost. And I think you're bringing up a good point. If you're grounded, if you know what you stand for, nobody can really take that away from you. You can go from job to job, but you can say, hey, that doesn't define me. I know who I am. So I think that's something we need more of.
And Jeff, you just described authenticity.
Yes.
Let me tell you my story, and I don't want people to feel sorry for me. And you've heard this before. A friend of mine's a organizational psychologist and behavioral psychologist, and he said this to me years ago. Most people don't change until the pain of remaining the same exceeds the pain of change. And let me tell you my story. At the age of 40, Jeff, support what you just said about identities. I was asked to resign from a, quote, comfortable executive job, my identity. I was 40. I went home and loaded a shotgun and put it in my mouth. And that's scary. My identity was external.
Yeah.
And you know what saved me? My wife's faith. We'll be married 52 years this year. My wife's faith has always been solid, just a quiet, solid. She's always known who she was and at peace with who she is.
Yeah. And
I started crying, Jeff. And real men don't cry, right? I cry at the grand opening of a Walmart now, by the way. But I started crying. I reached out. I said, God, I don't know what Jeannie has, but I need it. And that was the start of the change. Because somebody asked me, people hear my story today and they say, Byrd, we can't believe you used to be that way. I was in a season of self. That was drought. But I was asked, I was coaching a full colonel when we did work with the Army for 9 years. And he asked me a question. He said, Byrd, when did you finally get it? And I said, well, I'm still getting it. But my answer was and is when I realized it wasn't about me.
That's right. That's right. It's not about your ego. Once you can, yes, once you can sort of let that go, I feel like you have a higher purpose in
Look
life.
at you.
Yeah.
You know what my acronym for ego is? Edging growth out. You're right.
I got to write these things down. I love all these acronyms and quotes. Yeah.
Well, it's but you know what? And we're leading to, maybe we get ahead of myself. Well, I will. You have a question, I think, later about, and I'll just plant the seed right now. Something that's missing in leaders today, with rare exceptions, is humility.
Mm.
The word humility comes from the Greek word humus. That means dirt. Some of us need our dirt tilled so that water, the truth, can get down to the roots. True?
Yeah.
And that's why I want people in my life that tell me what I need to hear, not necessarily what I want to hear.
What I want to hear. Yeah. And that's a hard, what you're mentioning there is a very hard exercise to get to, because most of us are very bad when it comes to feedback. But when you get to that higher level, as you're noting, you almost want you want people around you to tell you, hey, think of us in a car together. We're all driving somewhere. You're in the passenger seat. You might have others who are in the back seat. If you are driving off close to a cliff or about to drive off the edge, you would want someone in that car to tell you, hey, listen, I think you're getting too close to there and you might end up driving us off the cliff. Right? You know, you want to hear from people telling you things that are uncomfortable at times. And
Jeff,
I think that's a huge learning, Byrd. That's difficult for most of us.
My friend, you get it. I've written a book called Can You Trust Me? And just that question, but again, the truth. Seek it, speak it, expect it, respect it, and live it. And yeah, truth is reality. Your example, going off a cliff, well, let's just go off a cliff. And my mama used to tell me, my mother had an 8th grade education, but a PhD in life. And the older I get, the smarter she gets. Said, son, show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
Mm.
And you're so right. And a lot of us, and I see it as a problem in our society, is confirmation bias. We want people to tell us what we want to hear, and that's danger in the comfort zone. Yes. You're either green and growing or ripe and rotting, and when you're not literally seeking, speaking, expecting, respecting, and living the truth like you're saying, you're not going to grow. You're not going to grow. Which leads me to my next question, a pivot away from technology and one more into current events. Speaking of growth, you know, looking at your experience as a public speaker, a leadership consultant, you know, do you have an analysis of the current situation we're in right now in terms of political leadership? I'm smiling because my wife, for this interview, she said, you better be careful. Jeff, I've never been politically correct, okay? Never. You know, I was a registered Republican. Now I'm a realist. I'll just say that. I look at 4 virtues of the most effective leaders that I gauge everything on. I got to plant the seed, okay? And here they are. Integrity of character, passion for what they do, compassion for those they serve, and humility. Humility. Now, and by the way, the truth is black and white, not red or blue. Yeah. And Abe Lincoln, I love what Abe Lincoln, he's one of my mentors, right? Stand by a man when he's right, part from him when he's wrong. So to answer your question, this is a major problem and I don't see the situation getting better in the short term. With rare exceptions, hubris has replaced humility. And
Yes.
we had too much PGA. I call it power, greed, arrogance. Power is I want to control. Greed, I want it all. And arrogance is I know it all. And you're getting ready to laugh. I got so tired of, there's a great book called How the Mighty Fall, written by Jim Collins. You know, his great bestseller was Good to Great, but one of his best books, I think, is How the Mighty Fall. 5 signs of how the mighty fall. You know what the first one is? Hubris, born of success, outrageous arrogance that brings suffering upon the innocent. Are we seeing it?
Yes.
So in 2009, now I'm older, remember Enron, back, WorldCom, Bernie Ebbers at WorldCom, we lost $50,000 in savings because Bernie Ebbers at WorldCom, same as Bernie Madoff, and then Enron, Arthur Anderson, right?
Yep.
And guess who suffered? Those hardworking people lost their retirements. But here's the hubris pledge of allegiance. You ready? I pledge allegiance to the dollar of the United States of America and to the power for which it stands, one nation under man, with greed and arrogance for all. Jeff, is that not true with rare?
Yes. Yeah, it's almost like we've forgotten the larger meaning of what life is, and we're trying to almost chase this, constantly chasing growth at any cost, which is leading to bad decisions. Yeah.
Well, and you get it. You know history. Who does history celebrate as far as? Here's an interesting thing. History kind of is the judge, right, of how these people will be judged.
Yeah.
You know, Gallup does a world's most admired survey every year. You know the person that was on it the most when he was alive? Billy Graham.
Interesting. I could see that. Yeah.
Humility. But you know what Billy Graham said? When you lose your wealth, you lose nothing. When you lose your health, you lose something. When you lose your character, you lose everything.
You lose everything. That's right.
But Jeff, those people that you and I respect talked about them. Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, Gandhi, St. Francis of Assisi. It's all humility, right? It was never about them. Where have all the servant leaders gone?
Yeah, it's a question I ask every single day. Yeah. You don't find them in many organizations.
And let me ask you a question. I talked with a good friend of mine that was a retired command sergeant major at the highest level. He's like a brother to me, and man, he is one of the most well-read, objective, unbiased. We all are biased people that I've ever met, though. And we were just talking about the lack of humility, and
I think what you're getting at is the need for integrity again. That we have to have standards, or we have to have values again, which again leads to my next question, which is trying to sort of solve for some of these things. You know, Gallup also did a poll last year in 2024 that a record high 80% of US adults believe Americans are greatly divided when it comes to values, what the most important values are. Now, obviously, we don't have to talk about how we're in a pretty divisive world. I think most of our viewers and listeners know that as well. But like, how do we solve for this? Like, what are strategies leaders can employ to, foster more of a collaborative culture?
Well, and it's interesting. You just said something that you or I, when we work for corporate America, we would be terminated if we weren't people of integrity, right?
Correct.
If we violated consistently, if we weren't people of integrity, we would be asked to leave, right?
Yeah, because you lose trust within an organization. If they find that you're, I don't know, I'm just using this like doctoring files, they're going to be like, listen, we can't trust you. You're gone. Or, if you're including people in a text message that shouldn't be included, you'd be gone. Yeah.
Yeah, or if you make racist comments, and
Yes.
I've got a client that I've done work with, the one I shared with you earlier, for 20 years. They're an $8 billion company. I love them. But listen to this. Listen, you know what their purpose is? This is a public company. You know what their purpose is? To honor God in all we do. Wow.
Interesting.
But listen to their core values, and I know for a fact that they live them. And if employees don't live them, you know, they no longer with the firm. Accountability, consistency, courage and conviction, discipline, honesty and integrity, humility, morality, optimism, respectfulness, supportiveness.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That company is very, very successful because they live those core values, Jeff, and they hold everybody accountable from the most senior to the most junior. Because you know, if you don't have equity and accountability, you lose trust, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So why do we tolerate this behavior in Washington? That's where my head's spinning sometimes.
Yeah. What's your answer to that question that you're asking yourself? Why do we tolerate that, Byrd?
You know, I think we're settling for mediocrity. We have double standards. It's interesting you said that. What David Brooks' World on Fire, I looked for this. Privatization of morality is when everyone is set adrift. Each of us comes up with our own moral values. Well, you know, I know Jeff violates my values. Remember, integrity of character, compassion, humility. But, you know, that's okay.
Yeah.
What does the Bible say? Just gain the world, lost your soul. You know, in my book, Dare to Lead, there is this. Integrity is a choice. It is consistently choosing the purity of truth over popularity. Self-justification is the beginning of self-destruction. Jeff, I was raised, I'm sure you were, there were certain values, for example, ethics.
Yes.
You did the right thing. My daddy was a true gentleman, but he said, son, there are two places I've been never have to get you because you won't like it. The police station or the principal's office.
That's right. That's right.
And we were adrift because this whole rationalization, you know, it's relative. No. And I just go back, and this is the question I ask of people. Remember I said earlier, truth, seek it, speak it, expect it, respect it, and live it. And Jeff, I really believe this. When the truth no longer matters, democracy no longer exists.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, can I tell you a personal story? This is the introduction. This is the introduction of my book, Can You Trust Me? Simple insight on how to live and lead with integrity. Listen to the story. I'll just tell you, I told you earlier, I'll be married 52 years this year. My wife's only been married 27. She raised me for the first 25. I'll just tell you, we were married in 1973, and the story I'm going to tell you occurred in 1974. This is the introduction. I wasn't a good husband, okay? But I was successful. All-American at Texas. But my mother, I was the only son, the pride and joy, owner of the college, you know, all of them. And my wife and my dad and our two children were young then. They were out on the lake in Austin. And Mom and I were sitting under an oak tree. And Jeff, she knew I wasn't a good husband. And she started questioning about my integrity. You know what I told her? I said, but Mama, I'm a good person. Thinking, Jeff, she'd get off my conscience, right? Let me go.
Yep. Yeah.
You know what she said? Son, there are a lot of good people in hell. Remember that quote earlier? The truth may sometimes hurt, but it'll always help.
Yeah.
The softest pillow is a clear conscience. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale said that. That's when you compromise your values.
Yeah. My next question actually is a swing away from some of the seriousness that we've been talking about in the show. And it's really more of, how do you look at people when you judge them giving like a good speech or talking to others in public. And the reason I ask this is it almost goes back to our earlier question around technology and artificial intelligence. I'm finding it interesting to see people who can actually stand in front of others and publicly speak. That wasn't really something that that was something people aspired to for a really long time. You mentioned Abraham Lincoln, and I think we've had that throughout history, but there's probably in the last 20 years like a falling off or a dropping off there where we haven't had really a lot of good public speakers. So I'm just curious, as this rises again, where people are put in front of cameras or audiences and having to sort of defend themselves or give public speeches, what makes a good one?
Are you talking about just a public speaker, period?
Yeah. Like, if I was to say to you, hey, I'm going to give a speech next month, what are some good qualities that you look at in terms of a good public speech?
Well, I'm going to go back to that word authenticity. Be yourself, because if you're not you're not going to engage people. Tell the truth. I learned my living for years being a professional speaker, and I'm a storyteller, and I just have a gift of bringing points to life, telling stories. But be real, and the ability to engage people's emotions, Jeff. Connect with their head and their heart. And again, if you're trying to fake it, people can sense that. And but just be reality and don't compromise your integrity. Don't try to please other people. Just be yourself.
Yeah.
And lift people up. Heroes build up, cowards beat up. Back to what we said earlier, people are looking for hope.
Yes. Yeah.
And we don't see many smiles anymore. And people tell me, Byrd, you always make me feel good. You challenge the way I think, but then you leave me feeling good about myself, wanting to go out there and it doesn't matter what we have or what we accomplish in life, Jeff. It's who we have beside us that we'll remember.
That's right.
And again, just make people feel good. And really to chat, my thing is, if I don't challenge the way people think, I've not done my job.
Yes.
If I don't get people out of their comfort zone, right?
You're not doing your job if you don't jog people sort of out of their stupor. Hey, do you also think that an add-on question to that, how important is, you talked about authenticity, but how important is like personality in all of this? When we
are you talking about the podcast and all, or just in general?
Yeah, just in general. Like I think let's say this, in the business world, how important is personality? I mean, it has that become important again in terms of navigating
charisma? Are you talking about charisma?
Yeah.
As long as people are real and they're not hiding behind a personality, does that make sense?
Yes. So they're not putting up, like, they're not wearing a mask. They're their true self. They're showing themselves.
Yeah.
The personality coming across is, hey, when I speak to that person, that's them in front of others. That's also them behind closed doors. That's the real deal.
You get it. Well, it's interesting. When I was on the speaking circuit, I shared the platform with a lot of celebrities, okay? And the greatest compliment people ever paid me, and I had a very blessed career, and this surprised me, but you know what they would tell me? Byrd, you're the same person off the stage as you are on the stage. That's what you're saying. And I'm not smart enough, Jeff. I'm not smart enough to, hey, what did I say then, right?
Yeah.
To cover my track. But interpersonal skill is very important. I just love people. I love people. I'm curious. I want to know. You know what? I want to know your story, Jeff. Now, I'm a speaker, but I have on my little pad, speak less, learn more. I want to know about your story. the power of your story. Like that young man, 26 years old, I met yesterday from Ethiopia. He told me a story.
That's right.
And guess what? When you are genuinely interested in other people, what does that tell them?
Well, it tells them that you're invested in them. They probably feel good, like you noted, being around someone like yourself.
Because if you really care, it lets them know you really care about them.
That's right.
I do some volunteer work with a nonprofit here in Nashville, take young men to come through the court system, out of jail, and puts them on a program that helps them, give them hope, jobs. There are 9 young men that we work with that I'm there, go twice a week. They're African Americans, black gentlemen. Let me tell you what, I've learned more to listen to their stories and how blessed I am. These are smart young men. They want hope, they want opportunity. But I got to know their stories. If I go in and start pontificating and talking about and they're all different skin color than mine, and they've learned not to trust white men. So it takes time for me to earn their trust, right?
Yeah.
Genuinely interested in their stories. I get emotional because I think I leave a lot. I took home and tell my wife, there but the grace of God go I. I'm not any better than them. If you don't love people, you'll never lead them.
What are the top 3 pieces of advice you would give someone who wants to become a leader for others or in their own life?
He said, I've given, be authentic. You got to know what your core values are. You got to know what your purpose is. And by the way, here's the question: if people want to know, here's how you develop your purpose to answer this question. I want to be remembered as the person who. When you're gone, what do you want people that you love the most, mean the most, say about you? Answer that question in one sentence. Mine was, live a life that inspires hope in others. So what are your core values? The roots that determine the fruit of your life. You said earlier, it's an inside-out thing, right? Got to know your purpose, your core values. That's authenticity.
Yes.
And the second, seek the truth. You know, that metaphor, the water's the truth. Seek it, speak it, expect it, respect it, and live it. Now, those words are easy said, Jeff, but how many of us live them?
Yep.
So seek the truth and live it. And then care for others.
It's an important one.
And when I close speaking, I always share this. I have this on a bookmark. Work hard, do your best, live the truth, trust yourself, have some fun, and most importantly, don't quit before the blessing.
Love it. Byrd, where can listeners find you online?
Well, I can leave my email address if that's okay, Jeff.
Yeah, of course.
It's Byrd Baggett, my first and last name, Byrd Baggett, the number 3 at gmail.com. birdbaggett3@gmail.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Byrd Baggett. And also I have a website, truegrowthleadership.com, truegrowthleadership.com. And my emails, I return my emails every day. And, I'm here to help and serve. So it's been a blessing. And by the way, Jeff, I said earlier, when I work with people, they either get it or they don't get it. You get it, friend. You're an old soul. No, it's been a blessing. There's nothing makes me feel better than helping somebody else.
Love it. Great words to leave listeners with. Byrd Baggett, thanks for joining us this week on Talk by Turner.
Thanks, Jeff. It's been a blessing. Have a wonderful day.
Talk by Turner, hosted by Jeffrey Colon. Watch and listen now wherever you enjoy podcasts.